Hello guys, how are we doing? This is Alex Spence, self-realised renunciate monk, coming at you live from lovely sunny England at the minute. I think I'm enjoying the last few days. So you never know when it's going to change now that we're coming into autumn and everything. But we're still going to maintain that positive vibe, and the weather's not going to change my groove, man. But I hope we're well. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world right now. I hope you're on a fantastic one. If you're going to bed, good night. If you're waking up, good morning. If you're in the middle of the day, I hope we're well. Just everything thrown at you. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about, just say a few words on something that was raised up yesterday about whether it's shadow work or not, whether what's going on in my life is something I need to confront or whatever. Just it can feel like such a confusing time. There can be so many like factors and fundamentals that you have to look at really to try and figure out what's going on, and it can be like a massive process of elimination. So I wanted to talk about that now, like things to go through, steps to sort of like work your way through to sort of work out whether, and sort of like boil it down to what issue it could be. And for me personally, I remember going through this exact same stage when I thought I was doing everything. I thought I was ticking all the boxes. I was meditating, even though I was struggling to meditate because something didn't seem in line with me. I was in my internal thought process. I was thought it was all on point. I was letting things go. I wasn't holding on to stuff, and it was like such a confusing time. But then it took one shift of something in my external world, which I won't go into detail now because this is not really about that, but it was a game changer. It just literally, it changed everything, the whole shebang. So I want to talk about that now, about trying to sort of work out whether it's shadow work. And for me personally, I boiled it down and it was shadow work. It was something that I needed to confront about myself, and it involved being brutally honest about how I was behaving at the time, how my character, the character that I was in at that time, just wasn't in line with who I was trying to become, if this makes sense. So let's talk about this now. Let's, like with everything, we'll start from within and then we'll work our way out and then end up in the stars and the moon, you know. But okay, so let's try and work out whether it's shadow work. Some of the science, some of the things to sort of tick in the boxes about everything in your life. And it's about, and this is what I always talk about, it's sometimes hard to do this because if you're not feeling clear-headed, it's hard to look at life from a higher vantage point, to look at things from a higher perspective. So sometimes it's sometimes handy if someone just sort of like gives you a pointing finger, of like what could be going on. So let's make like a tick list of everything that's going on. So basically, let's start from within, and let's talk at your thought processes. What internally is sort of like, are you holding on to? Is there anything that you sort of like you can't let go of? What characters of mind have been created from an early age? Like what irritations or what sort of factors of like your internal mechanism were created from a child, from childhood relationships, childhood experiences? Is there something that stayed with you that's internally, the cogs are going, the mechanics are going? And then just look at everything, just look at your thought processes. What's going on? Is it what battles are going on from within that you could potentially let go of? And then sort of like, as soon as if you look through all of that and you sort of like, you feel like everything's on point, you feel like you've let go of this and stuff like that, then you sort of like start working your way sort of outwards. How are you feeding your body? How are you feeding the senses? I think we spoke about this the other day as well. How could this be impacting how you are? Because if something feels like it's shadow work, I mean, you don't think it is. It's all about, if you feel out of a line, I think that's what it all boils down to. If you think that it might be shadow work or it might be not, something somewhere is out of line with you and who you are and your beliefs of who you truly are. So it's just a case of sort of like getting to the bottom of that. And like what you feed your senses, is that in line with who you are right at the minute? Is sort of like, as well as your senses. What are you feeding? Like what are you feeding your body? What sort of like what's going in? What could be affecting your physiology? And I think if you start ticking that, maybe sort of like it's about process of elimination. Maybe it's time to start eradicating some stuff, just to really clean everything up diet-wise. Get all this chemicals and toxins, just get that all out. Just tick that box. If you've sort of like looked at your thought process, if you feel like you're letting everything go and you're going through that and you're forgiving and you're ticking that box, then you've sort of like looked to the external, then you start like looking at your diet, how that could be affecting your physiology and how you feel. Could what you be feeding yourself be creating like this depression or anxiety or this separateness that's going on right now? And then if you sort of like you've ticked that box, then look to your even more external world, and that's like look to your relationships. Who in your life is sort of serving you where you are now? Are people bringing the best out of you or the worst out of you? Are people that are in front of you? This is what happened to me personally. I had everything about myself that was being reflected straight back at me through people. That's when it turned out for me it was shadow work, and it was sort of like there was elements of me that I needed to sort of like let go of. And because at the time, the way I was behaving, the way I was acting, it just wasn't in line with who I truly was. And I knew deep down that I wanted to be more in line over here. So I had to take a U-turn by sort of changing my relationships that I was with, and just everything to do with that. And it just took, like I say, it just took one shift. So, and then sort of like, if you look to your the people in your life and you can't see any relationship issues, then look to your environment. Look to where you live. Like it's where you live really in line with you, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like where you work, is that causing some sort of like misalignment? And this is when sort of like when your purpose can come into play. And if you don't feel like you're living your purpose, what sort of divot is that creating? What kind of void is that sort of like creating to brew up these emotions? Because I've been through this as well, where you feel like when you're not in line with your true purpose, you can just sort of like everything just goes just totally out of control. It's really sort of like, and this is the thing. There's so much. It can feel like really overwhelming to sort of like try and figure all this stuff out. There's so many fundamentals and variables which can create a misaligned state, which creates the bad habits that you can potentially pick up. That's internally thinking, how your thought processes work. Let's say if you're not in line with your purpose, this can create, I've spoke about this before, how this can create sort of negative thought processes, which sort of like in turn spiral into negative habits and behaviours in your external world. And if it comes down to it, and if you've ticked all of these, if you are living your purpose, if you feel like that, and then you've ticked all this, you feel like you're being forgiven, you're meditating, but something just doesn't feel right, then does it come down to a fact of like being brutally honest about who is in front of me? What elements of me do I have to confront? Am I sort of behaving in alignment with who I'm trying to be? Sorry about the sun glare there, that's a bit better. Sorry about the sun, but it's lovely, man. It's a lovely day. So that's my sort of advice really, to figure out whether it's shadow work. Tick all the other boxes. Tick everything that I've just tried to sort of like express right now. And it can be tricky. But I think the biggest one is being really brutally honest with how you are right now. Is sort of the way you act in the very present moment now. Is that in line with who you're trying to become? I think that's, for me personally, that's what was the biggest confrontation I had, was the fact of I felt like I was doing all this. I felt like I was ticking all the boxes. I was ticking all this, but of doing the meditation, I felt like I was letting go. But then I was sort of like, I was having patterns of behaviour, and my actions didn't complement all the sort of internal work that was going on. It can turn out to be quite a contradiction, but it got me to a point where I sort of, like I've said before, just about beating myself into a submission, about having to admit this. And all the shadow work basically means all the stuff that's buried back of sort of thought processes and behaviours that are buried all the way back that you don't want to confront about yourself. And it just always gets to a point where it's that blunt, honest to say, God, look, the way I'm behaving now, it manifested all this. It manifested like a negative relationship. It manifested negative feelings from within, to the point where, say, your nervous system can be shot because you're so out of line with how you are. So there's just some sort of like just some things to sort of think about. That is my strongest advice. Just try and tick all of that. Just work from within and work your way out to your external world and assess everything. Put your life under sort of like this massive microscope. Because if you're confused whether it's shadow work or not, something in life just isn't in line. Because if you feel confused, but if you don't feel confused, and you feel like everything is like, you sort of know, you may have that shift of sort of like, there will be no confusion if you are in line, because your energy will just be emanating that you are in line. It's hard to sort of get across how that feeling and that shift can happen when you do get in line with who you truly are and embody it. And because unfortunately I've made that shift, but it took years of sort of suffering mentally, and sort of you have to learn a lot of lessons about yourself and about how everything from here is reflected into your external world, and it's that honesty, and it's having that honesty, and then the courage to sort of follow everything through, even if to the point where you could lose everyone in your life. Your new beliefs that you have could literally alienate everyone around you, and it could sort of flip your world upside down. There's a really fantastic book by Adyashanti. It's called The End of Your World, because that's what this is. The confrontation with everything that you don't want to admit about yourself is potentially going to end your world as you know it and turn it upside down. And it's having the courage and being brave enough to follow that through. And I didn't have the courage, and I was a wet blanket for years. And it's sort of like it came at a cost. So please, if you could leave your comments and everything round about at the bottom about this, if anything that you're struggling with at the minute, I mean, just ask yourself the question: do you feel it in line with who you are? And be honest with yourself. That's the biggest thing. It's one of the first videos I did was about honesty, because in this game that's what it's all about: brutally honest and admitting all your flaws, getting over them, and then moving on. But I hope this has sort of helped. I'm always just about clarity and bringing awareness on people on this journey. It's about becoming awake, staying awake, and sort of like following everything through. Knowing you've got the inner strength and courage to sort of overcome anything. That you can have the courage to the point where it just doesn't matter if your world is flipped upside down. Because you're awesome, mate. Okay, this is Alex Spence. I've gone on for enough again. So I just felt like getting this out there. Just really get that energy. But peace out, much love. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. You know I love you. Thank you for your likes, comments. Hope you like the pretty photos that I'm putting up. But much love. If you haven't already, sign up for the newsletter just once a week. More nice stuff like this. But much love and peace out, and have a fantastic day, whatever you do. God bless.